This story begins with a fisherman from a remote island tribe named Sali. One day, he found a baby boy in a canoe that had washed ashore. The baby was the only survivor from a huge storm that happened the night before, while the other people at sea were reported to have drowned. Sali then took the baby to his tribal chief, Malio. After discussing with the village elders, they believed the baby was a gift from the gods. His survival was seen as a special sign, so Malio decided to adopt him and planned to make him the future leader of the tribe. However, that decision was opposed by his wife, Hoku, because they already had a biological son named Nawa. Despite this, Malio insisted and named the baby Tamariki Otangarowa, who was later called Tama.
One day take over the role of this child. Name him!
Feelings of jealousy and worry about her own child's future drove Hoku to spread slander among the islanders. Hoku claimed that Tama was not a bringer of blessings, but a messenger of the god of misfortune.
Surely you do not consider the storm to be... This god of mischief would seem...
Over time, the lie began to be believed by many people, including Malio himself. As a result, Tama's status as an adopted child was revoked, and he was no longer recognized as the future heir of the tribe. Seeing Tama neglected, Sali felt pity and decided to take care of him. Since Sali was a fisherman, he taught Tama various life skills like catching fish, repairing boats, and working hard to survive. His goal was for Tama to become a tough fisherman someday. Living with Sali made Tama feel accepted and happy. However, the situation changed when Sali had a biological child. Tama began to feel anxious and afraid of being pushed aside. This feeling drove him to secretly build a boat with the intention of leaving the island. Unfortunately, before that plan could be carried out, Nawa and his friends came with the intent to torment Tama. The situation changed when a girl named Mahana threw things at them until Nawa and his friends ran away.
Oh, just give me my bag, no. They don't like me either.
That night, Sali's house caught fire. Luckily, Sali's child survived because he was under Tama's care at the time. Even so, Sali blamed Tama, feeling the fire could have been prevented if Tama hadn't gone outside. In his anger, Sali returned Tama to Malio. Malio then announced to all the villagers that if no one was willing to take care of Tama, he would set him adrift at sea. Hearing this, a drunkard named Pioi agreed to take Tama. Not out of compassion, but so Tama could help his daughter, Mahana, with her daily chores.
Finished by sunset.
That night, Pioi told Mahana about his past. Pioi blamed Mahana's birth for his wife's death and belittled his daughter by saying Mahana wasn't as beautiful as her mother. Pioi even said Mahana would be lucky if a man ever married her for a dowry of just 2 chickens. Those words hurt Mahana's heart. The next day, Tama helped Mahana sell firewood because Pioi refused to work. Some island girls who liked Tama came to flirt with him, but Tama turned them down out of respect for Mahana. The rejection made them angry, and they instead started insulting Mahana with harsh words. Tama, who couldn't accept it, immediately chased them away. Since their goods weren't selling, Tama invited Mahana to bathe in the river. There, Mahana poured out her sadness, feeling unloved by her father and considered the ugliest girl on the island. Tama comforted her and promised that one day he would marry Mahana with a dowry of 3 fat chickens. That promise made Mahana smile happily. When they got home, Pioi took his anger out on Tama and called him a bringer of bad luck. After Tama left, Mahana sincerely covered her sleeping father with a blanket. That act made Pioi realize that even though Mahana wasn't beautiful, she had a good heart. Not long after that, Tama asked Mahana to leave the island with him on the boat he had built, so they could be free from insults and suffering. The next morning, while Pioi was still fast asleep, Mahana secretly met Tama on the beach. However, Tama was surprised to see Mahana come without bringing anything. Tama asked why she was leaving empty-handed. Mahana then explained that she couldn't go with Tama. Her reason was simple but heavy. Her father, Pioi, had no one else to take care of him. No matter how badly her father treated her, Mahana felt she still had a duty to care for the person who gave birth to her. Hearing that decision, Tama gave up on his plan to take Mahana away. However, it was Mahana who told Tama to leave the island anyway. Mahana knew that almost all the people there hated Tama, and his life would never be peaceful if he stayed. Before parting, Mahana gave Tama an armband as a keepsake. Mahana hoped Tama would always remember that on that island, there was a girl who sincerely loved him. Tama promised that one day he would return to marry Mahana. After making that promise, Tama finally sailed away from the island. With great struggle, he managed to break through the fierce ocean waves. His success made Tama feel relieved and happy. Meanwhile, Mahana could only watch from afar with mixed feelings. In her heart, Mahana promised herself that she would come to the beach every day, hoping that one day Tama would return as he had promised.
I'll search the horizon every day.
On his perilous journey, Tama's boat was hit by a terrible storm. Tama was tossed about at sea until he finally washed ashore on another inhabited island, unconscious. Not long after, a heavy-set man found Tama and brought him to his home. When Tama woke up, the man introduced himself as Steward. After Steward left, a female servant named Teddy came bringing clean clothes for Tama. Teddy explained that Tama was very lucky because he had washed up on the island owned by a famously generous and highly respected wealthy trader named Johnny Lingo. After changing clothes, Tama was taken to meet Johnny Lingo. Johnny arrived shortly after. It was revealed that Steward was his loyal servant and close friend. Johnny then asked how Tama had ended up washed ashore on that island. Tama explained that he was sailing alone when suddenly a huge storm hit his boat, causing him to lose consciousness. When he woke up, he was already in that place, saved by Steward. Hearing that story, Johnny showed a friendly attitude and promised to take Tama around the island the next day.
Maybe.
I start to show you around our island.
The next morning, Johnny truly kept his promise. He took Tama to see various corners of the island, introducing him to food sources and the well-organized life there. Seeing Johnny be so good to Tama, the always cautious Steward began to feel worried. Steward suggested that Tama be sent back to his place of origin, fearing Tama was just a naughty kid who would later cause trouble. However, Johnny dismissed that remark. With full confidence, Johnny chose to raise Tama and intended to train him to become a great trader someday. Steward, who didn't fully agree, could only be silent and eventually left them. That day, Johnny also told Tama that the workers on the island were formerly slaves. However, Johnny had freed them all. For him, wealth wasn't just for personal enjoyment, but also for helping people living in hardship.
Older than you, I was taught to.
Then, Johnny took Tama to the cattle pen to teach him how to care for livestock. However, Tama, who wasn't used to it, got scared and reflexively climbed a tree, making the atmosphere a bit awkward, yet funny. That night, even though his life was now better, Tama's thoughts drifted to Mahana. Deep longing made him restless. The urge to see Mahana finally grew stronger. In his restlessness, Tama decided to escape from the island, and without thinking twice, he took some of Johnny's jewelry. Unfortunately, his action was caught by Steward. Steward then brought Tama before Johnny. Johnny felt puzzled and disappointed because he had been treating Tama so well all along. Tama then confessed that he stole the jewelry because he wanted to give it to Mahana as provisions for their future life. Instead of getting angry, Johnny showed his wisdom. He handed the jewelry over to Tama, but on one condition. Tama had to redeem it by working for Johnny for 7 years. Johnny emphasized that if Tama truly loved Mahana, then he must not give her something obtained through theft. Giving a gift from a crime, Johnny said, was the same as demeaning the woman he loved. For him, true love is built on sacrifice and honesty. That's why Tama was asked to prove his love by working hard for 7 years, for a clean and honorable future with Mahana. The next day, Tama began working under Johnny's wing. Steward was specifically tasked with guiding and supervising his every step. After finishing the job of pounding noni fruit, Steward told Tama to repair a damaged fishing net. Fortunately, Tama already knew how because Sally had taught him before. That skill allowed him to finish the job quickly. Not long after, Teddy approached Tama. During a work break, Tama asked why Steward never seemed to stop giving him tasks.
And when you have finished the street, but let me warn you.
Teddy then explained that Steward's intention was actually good. He wanted Tama to get used to being a responsible and hard-working person. Seeing Tama repairing the net neatly, Teddy remarked that Tama's father must have been a skilled fisherman. Tama explained that he was an orphan and never knew his parents. He could repair nets because he was once cared for by Sally, a fisherman who taught him many things about the sea. Teddy advised Tama to keep working hard and stop complaining, because only through perseverance could his life improve. From then on, Tama worked diligently every day.
Tama proved.
I hope you're not
Thanks to his diligence, Johnny's affection for Tama grew. One day, Johnny asked Tama to demonstrate how the small boat he had built worked. After seeing Tama's demonstration, Johnny tried to get on the boat. However, being unaccustomed to it, Johnny fell several times, making the situation quite funny. After that, Johnny explained that if Tama wanted to be a great sailor, he needed to learn to understand wind direction. On the boat, Tama asked how to know direction in the middle of the vast ocean. Johnny answered that since ancient times, their ancestors used the stars as a guide for sailing. Time passed. 8 years later, Tama had grown into an intelligent and knowledgeable young man, thanks to the tireless guidance of Steward and Johnny, who taught him various life skills. Meanwhile, on Tama's home island, Pioi intended to marry off Mahana, who was now an adult, to a bald man. The dowry he asked for was only 2 fat chickens. Hearing that plan, Mahana, who was still faithfully waiting for Tama's return, immediately refused. She even threw an egg at the man's face as a form of rejection. When she got home, Pioi was furious because Mahana had embarrassed her suitor. Mahana, who was fed up with her situation, chose to leave home. Back on Johnny Lingo's island, Tama had now grown into a young man. One day, Johnny asked Tama to accompany him on an important trading trip to a nearby island. Upon arrival, Johnny, known as a generous merchant, was warmly welcomed by the local tribal chief named Doob. However, a small mistake occurred. After finishing the drink he was served, Tama accidentally spilled it. That act was considered disrespectful by Doob. His anger peaked. Doob demanded a cow from Johnny as a dowry for his son's marriage. If that demand wasn't met, Doob threatened to hang Tama alive.
The cow would certainly be.
Boss would be pleased with. The canoe needs a.
Because Johnny was old, Tama decided to go fetch the cow. Johnny had to stay on the island as collateral. Before leaving, Tama hugged Johnny emotionally while crying. Tama acknowledged that Johnny had treated him very well, and he already considered him like his own father. Tama then set sail. Upon reaching Johnny's island, Tama immediately found Steward and explained that they needed to bring a cow to Doob's island immediately. If they were late, Johnny's life would be in danger. Hearing that, Steward without hesitation took a cow, and they hurriedly sailed to Doob's island. Upon arrival, Tama immediately handed over the cow to Doob. Then, Doob invited them to Turtle Island to attend his son's wedding. The daughter of Turtle Island's chief looked very happy, because her dowry was a cow, a bridal price never before received by any woman on the surrounding islands. At that moment, the mother of Turtle Island's chief, named Mealy, saw Tama and immediately approached him. Steward, who was worried, tried to stop her, but Tama allowed the woman to speak. Mealy then asked who Tama's father was. Tama answered that he was an orphan, and as a baby, he had once washed ashore on Malio's island. Hearing that admission, Mealy looked shocked. She then examined Tama's body and found a birthmark identical to her own. A shocking fact was revealed. Tama was actually Mealy's grandson who had been missing for 23 years. Before all the island's inhabitants, Mealy announced that Tama was her grandson and the rightful heir to the chiefdom of Turtle Island.
waiting.
Another fact was also revealed. The girl to be married to Dub's son was actually a close relative of Tama, the child of his own uncle. Initially, Tama was willing to accept the position as his uncle's successor, because by lineage he was the true heir. However, when he saw Johnny Lingo and Steward preparing to leave the island, Tama's feelings changed. He felt heavy-hearted and sad to have to part with the people who had raised him. Seeing this, Mealy, who understood her grandson's heart, finally allowed Tama to go back to work and live with Johnny.
Woman has this born.
Before parting, Mealy gave Tama a hereditary necklace of hers, as a symbol that noble blood still flowed within him.
The chief's son.
Upon returning to their island, the now increasingly elderly Johnny took Tama to visit a grave. It turned out to be the grave of the first Johnny Lingo. Johnny then told the story of his past. Long ago, as a child, Johnny also often got into trouble, until he finally met the first Johnny Lingo. That person was the one who educated and raised him to become a great merchant. When the first Johnny Lingo died, all his wealth and the name Johnny Lingo were inherited by him, making him the second Johnny Lingo. Now Johnny said that he would bequeath all his wealth as well as that great name to Tama. In doing so, Tama would become the third Johnny Lingo. The mission Tama must undertake is the same, to use his wealth to help people in distress. Not long after saying all that, Johnny's health deteriorated further. In his final moments, Johnny returned the wristband that belonged to Tama. Johnny explained that Teddy had adjusted the size of the band to fit Tama's now adult wrist. Receiving the band back made Tama very happy. He had thought it was lost forever. Before taking his last breath, Johnny also instructed Tama to marry Mahana and to one day have a son who would become the fourth Johnny Lingo. After conveying his will, Johnny passed away and was buried near the grave of the first Johnny Lingo. Now, as the new Johnny Lingo, Tama immediately sent Steward to Malio's island to carry out Johnny's final request.
I am the chief steward of because we believe, however, we are therefore.
Upon arriving at Malio's island, Steward told the villagers that he was sent by Johnny Lingo to announce that the merchant would come to the island to look for a prospective wife. Steward also delivered gifts in the form of several barrels of drink. Hearing that news, all the girls on the island cheered joyfully. Malio, as the tribal chief, declared that they would welcome Johnny Lingo's arrival with a big feast. Pioi, who heard the news, immediately ordered Mahana to attend the wife selection feast, hoping his daughter might be chosen as the wife of the wealthy merchant. However, Mahana refused because she was still faithfully waiting for Tama. On the other hand, Miriama, who was actually Nawa's fiancée, canceled her marriage. Miriama hoped to be chosen by Johnny Lingo. Strangely, Malio wasn't angry about that decision, but Nawa was deeply disappointed and chose to leave. Because of this wife selection plan, almost all the young men on the island were left by their partners. A few days later, Johnny Lingo finally arrived at Malio's island. Malio welcomed him with full respect, not realizing that the young man before him was Tama, the child who was once cast out from his tribe. No one recognized Tama. That night, a big feast was held. Meanwhile, Nawa and his disappointed friends went to Mahana's house and forced her to marry. However, Mahana flatly refused and chased them away. At the wife selection feast, all the girls were present in their finest attire. Even though Miriama was known as the most beautiful girl on the island, Tama wasn't interested at all. Tama was actually disappointed because Mahana, the girl he most awaited, didn't come to the feast. The next morning, Tama went to Pioi's house to look for Mahana. However, Mahana wasn't home. Pioi explained that his daughter had gone to the beach, as she did every day. Without hesitation, Pioi then led Tama to the beach to meet Mahana. However, along the way, they encountered Mahana herself, who was on her way home. Seeing this, Tama immediately asked Pioi and Steward to go ahead first. He wanted to speak with Mahana alone. After they moved away, Tama directly asked why Mahana hadn't come to the prospective wife selection feast the night before. Mahana answered honestly that she had no interest at all in becoming Johnny Lingo's wife. Tama then asked for her reason. However, since Mahana didn't recognize that the man before her was Tama, she actually got offended. Mahana immediately left while throwing something at Tama. That afternoon, the girls on the island grew curious and approached Steward. They asked which girl Johnny Lingo would choose as his wife. With a little white lie to keep the peace, Steward answered that Johnny hadn't been able to decide because all the girls on the island were equally beautiful. Meanwhile, Tama went off alone to the river. By accident, there he saw Mahana bathing. Tama then teased Mahana by saying that if she didn't want to answer his question, he wouldn't give her clothes back. Feeling cornered, Mahana finally agreed. After putting her clothes back on, Mahana approached Tama. Tama then asked again why Mahana went to the beach every single day. With teary eyes, Mahana told the story that she was waiting for someone who once promised to return to marry her. However, after waiting so long, that person never came. Mahana began to think that man might have died. She felt foolish for having faithfully waited for 8 full years. Hearing that confession, Tama's heart broke. He only then realized how great Mahana's loyalty and suffering had been all this time.
I hope one day you can...
Not long after that, Steward announced to all the islanders that Johnny Lingo had made a decision. Johnny would choose Mahana, the daughter of Pioi the drunkard, to be his wife. Hearing that announcement, all the girls on the island were deeply disappointed. Meanwhile, Pioi was overjoyed and could hardly believe that his daughter, who was always considered ugly, had been chosen by the richest man. However, Mahana, who still missed Tama, went to the beach instead. There, she sat alone reminiscing about her childhood with Tama, when they used to play and share dreams. The next day, Steward visited Pioi to ask what dowry he wanted for Johnny Lingo to marry Mahana. Pioi said that even though Mahana wasn't beautiful, she was a diligent girl, good at cooking, capable of taking care of the house, and very filial. Pioi admitted that Mahana had taken care of him for years, even though he was a lazy father. Because of that, Pioi only asked for a dowry of 2 cows. Hearing that request, Steward actually got angry and felt insulted. In his opinion, Johnny Lingo was a very wealthy man. It wasn't fitting for his dowry to be only 2 cows. Seeing her father being scolded, Mahana, who from the start didn't want to marry Johnny Lingo, immediately left the place. At that moment, Tama finally spoke up. Tama said that he would give 8 cows as a dowry for Mahana. Not long after, Pioi went outside and found 8 cows standing in his yard. Seeing that, Pioi was truly happy and never expected his daughter to receive such a large dowry. However, since Mahana still refused to marry, Tama didn't force her. Tama explained that the 8 cows weren't a coercion, but a gift for Mahana in return for her loyalty in waiting for someone she loved for 8 years. With a broken heart, Tama then intended to leave. However, by accident, Mahana saw the bracelet she had once given now worn on Tama's wrist. At that moment, Mahana realized that the man she had been dealing with as Johnny Lingo was actually Tama, the man she had longed for all these years. With indescribable happiness, Mahana immediately hugged Tama in front of many people. The 2 of them finally married with a grand celebration. Several years later, Tama was seen telling the story of his life's journey to a writer. Not long after, his child and wife, Mahana, came to join him. The writer then took his leave, thanking Tama for being willing to share the story of his life, filled with struggle and sacrifice.